So, Will, how did you know or meet Carl Rogers for the first time? Or how did you know about the approach for the first time? And what made you reach out? I think was the center of the studies of the person already known by then, or
No,
did it have that name?
not when I first was attracted. It was called Western Behavioral Sciences Institute. And that's what I was attracted to, the behavioral sciences, as I was am an anthropologist. And they were doing work with small groups, and my anthropology study was with about family interaction in Mexico. And most anthropologists were not interested in that. They had a grander ideas about what anthropology was trying to do. So I kind of was drifting towards psychology as a explanatory way of understanding, trying to mix the two, the social and the personal. And I had never heard of Carl Rogers in my education, and I applied to be at the Western Behavioral Sciences Institute because they were doing applied research. And that's what I was thinking I wanted to do. I did do. And they wrote me, they called me and said, you're accepted as a postdoctoral fellow. And that's when I went. And they said, well, we want to caution you that you won't have a lot of time with Carl Rogers. And I said, so? Who cares? Who's Carl Rogers? I never heard of him. And so then at that time, I had just finished my dissertation, or was having it typed. In those days, everything was hand typed. And so I went to our university library and pulled out the only book they had by Carl Rogers there. And I read through it and said, oh, this is interesting. And the last chapter, which was about education, was the one I said, oh my gosh, this is how I wish my education had been. Here I am getting my stamp on my forehead to be a PhD in anthropology. And I said, oh wow, they just, you can do what you want, and kind of they'll help you rather than they're telling you what to do and you do it, which is how my education had been. So I was very much attracted by that part, because the psychological part I wasn't trying to help people. I was studying people and how we interact. So, and then when I went to the center, it had just started maybe a year before I got there. They had split off from the Western Behavioral Sciences, and they had a kind of difference of opinion about how to do that, how to do work. And so I was able to be in both institutions. They were a block apart, and many people were in both as well. So I had an office in the Western Behavioral Sciences, and I hung out with the people in the Center for Studies of the Person. After a while, I got interested in what was going on there, and took an apprenticeship in psychotherapy with one of the practitioners there. And that's how I called myself a psychotherapist, because I started practice after that. Carl himself invited me to join one of the courses he was teaching at a university, but he held it in his home. And so he came with a big box of carton with books in it. He said, well, if any of you want to borrow any of these books, go ahead. And then we sat down and, well, what is it you're going to do? He would say, or how do you feel? And some people, Carl teaches this, and other people were saying, well, I think I want to study how birds sing in India, okay? And so he just sort of helped people find what they wanted to study, and that was exactly what I was looking for.
Amazing.